Soldier of Fortune is a first-person shooter that was developed by Raven Software, published by Activision and released on the PS2 in November of 2001. Originally released on the PC roughly a year earlier, this game was met with praise but did cause a bit of a stir in some parts of the world due to its graphic nature, and in Germany was placed on the index list for Federal Department of Media harmful to young persons. Now, personally, I find all of the controversy surrounding games of this era quite funny. Plenty of games like this one, along with a host of others, were always under the microscope for their gore and violence, but looking back on it, I do have to wonder, why did anyone take this game seriously?
Saber, the plan's failed! We got hostages! Whatever it takes, I want those explosives detonated!
The narrative of this title is the video game equivalent of something Michael Bay would put out in the cinema. It is barely coherent, it is explosive, and it is downright silly, but that does not make it any less entertaining. You play as John Mullins, a US mercenary working for an anti-terrorist organisation known as the Shop, which is hired by the government when things get a little rough. Right at the opening of the game, a group of terrorists steal some nukes from a facility in Russia with the intent to sell them on to a number of different countries. At this point, Mullins and his partner Hawk are called into action, which leads them both on a globe-trotting and all-guns-blazing adventure as they try to put a stop to the terrorist plans and recover the weapons of mass destruction.
Hawk, John, sounds like we have our work cut out for us.
3 more nukes, each one in a hotbed of its own. What's first?
Moving on to the gameplay, let me just start by saying that Soldier of Fortune is the most shootery shooter of first-person shooters, because good lord, do you shoot a lot of people in this game. It features roughly a dozen missions of running through numerous urban and military settings, while enemies endlessly jump out at you like they're henchmen from a Time Crisis game, and you will fill every single one of them with bullets from the standard selection of weapons. Now that might sound a bit bland and not very exciting, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting much from this game when I loaded it up, but there is a surprisingly enjoyable flow to it all that results in a really fun time. Because this was originally made for the PC, I assume the developers had 2 choices when porting it to console. You could tweak the movement and aiming so they're suitable for analog sticks, or you could just throw in some heavy auto-aim and let people wreak havoc. To this game's benefit, they chose the latter. I can't remember the last time I've been able to settle into a game this old so quickly and just have a great time without any real learning curve. It's refreshing for me to see a shooter from 2001 age so well. You could say despite the auto-aim the controls are a little stiff, leaving you walking into walls from time to time, but the game is so forgiving that it doesn't matter if you get caught on the environment while trying to strafe out of the way of enemy fire. No matter what weapon you use, they're all useful in their own right, and when you run out of ammo for your shotgun and have to switch to your pistol, you don't feel like your firepower has been drastically reduced, because as long as you keep moving and keep shooting, you'll make it through just fine. It's always important to me that when playing an FPS, the weapons feel powerful, and through a combination of the game's sound design, animation and physics, Soldier of Fortune achieves this. You may be wondering why this game got so much flack back in the day. Well, the reason for this was due to the wonderful feature of its engine that allows character models to break down into 26 different ways. You can shoot off legs, arms and heads, and you can even shoot them in some areas and have organs fall out. Now, because this game is utter chaos 90% of the time, you might not get the chance to stand still and pick your shot and choose how you will dismember the terrorists, but you'll definitely see some limbs fly off if you get up close and personal with a shotgun. This is nothing but fast-paced, gory madness most of the time. You don't have to have a considered approach to any of the scenarios it throws at you, and even though from what I've read it is possible to disarm enemies and play non-lethally, why would you do that with a game this fun? Another area in which it exceeded my expectations were its graphics. I was not expecting an FPS that is almost 20 years old to age as well as it did, but this game still looks sharp. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a technical marvel, but there is a consistency to the visuals that I appreciated. Most of the environments are kind of blocky and largely made up of straight lines and right angles, and the texture work is decent but not pretty by any means, yet somehow I was never distracted by how it all looked, because all of it felt like it was carefully put together at the time. This is one of those games where you could tell the developers knew the limitations of their tech and played it smart by not stepping outside of what their engine could handle. This results in a game that doesn't have any highs or lows in its presentation, and the game is all the better for it. Sonically, the game does pack a punch as the weapons sound appropriately thunderous at times, really adding to just how much you are obliterating everyone in front of you. Part of me feels like I should say that the soundtrack is forgettable, but at the same time, that could be because I didn't hear any of it over the constant gunfire. I was fond of the voice acting. As I said earlier, I'm not sure how anyone looked at this game and managed to take it seriously, because while the dialogue is anything but Shakespearean, the performances from the voice actors are to be admired, even if ironically.
You scope out the location of this bomber. Queen Bee must already be on board. I'll take out the gun.
Hurry, John!
In conclusion, Soldier of Fortune is a game that is far from perfect, but sort of hard to dislike. In a way, it's the ideal retro game. It's fast, it's fun, it doesn't require you to get to grips with how things used to work, and you could pick this up today and just get stuck in. With an action-packed but relatively brief campaign in which you'll destroy literally thousands of body parts, you might not have a great time, but you certainly won't have a bad one either.